Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Heal Profoundly and Enduringly. My name is Laura Mazzotta, and this show is all about you being able to gather tools, techniques, and connections to help yourself heal sustainably and in a way that feels more easy, more graceful, not so freaking stressful. So today I'm here to announce that Kelly Doherty, see, I can never pronounce your last name, is fabulous and amazing. She's also an author of Holistic Mental Health, which is really exciting. But I'm excited because she is like the queen of talking about grief and loss. And if you want an expert, she's your woman. She's a licensed clinical social worker and certified grief counselor with over 20 years of experience in the field of grief and loss. She currently owns and operates a private practice, Greater Life Grief Counseling, in Malta, New York. She's helped thousands of individuals navigate their grief journey by providing individual and group therapy to children, adolescents, and adults experiencing illness and bereavement. Kelly has dedicated her career to helping individuals integrate their grief into their life in a healthy way by developing healthy coping skills and achieving their goals through the utilization of cutting-edge, proven techniques. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
You're so welcome. So we always start this show the same way. I'm just pulling it up on my phone so that I can monitor comments. But we always start this show by identifying what is that one thing that you feel is necessary to heal profoundly and enduringly.
Well, I think in terms of grief and loss, you have to lean into it. I think my clients would all tell you I say that way too often to them, but you really do need to lean into it. You need to feel it. You need to experience it. You need to get curious about your grief and sit with it. We tend to want to avoid our grief because it's hard. It sucks. Let's be honest. Grief is it's really hard. But the more that we can sit with it, the more that we can move through it. We're never going to get over it, but we can learn to live with it and really being able to lean into it. Otherwise, when we don't lean into it, we avoid it, it's going to come back. I've seen it happen with somebody. It took 30 years, but finally it hit them. And then I have another client that it's been 6 years and she's finally just starting grief counseling. She's completely avoided it for the last 6 years. And to see the transformation in just a few months for her is amazing. And there's one study that I read that talks about actually avoiding it is actually harder than actually feeling it and experiencing it.
Well, I feel like it lasts longer, right? Like when you dive into it, it might feel intense, but it's going to pass so much quicker.
Yeah. Avoidance strengthens it. You know, it just makes it harder. And grief isn't, like I said, it's not something you're going to get over, but you can learn to live with it and you can have a fulfilling, happy life while also still honoring your grief and your connection to your loved one. But you do need to do the work.
Yeah. Kind of
unfortunately
prioritize it, like knowing where it's going to get you, not like, exactly. Oh, I'm doing this to like dive into the depths of hell. Right. But like, because like, I know this is giving me freedom. It's liberating you. Yeah. And honestly, providing more intimacy with your past loved one.
Absolutely. Yes. We want that connection. You know, that continuing bond is so important. Just because they're gone doesn't mean that we can't still have that connection to them. It may look very different, obviously, but we can still have that continuing bond if it's appropriate and healthy. I want to specify that because not all relationships are healthy. There's some toxic relationships, and when they die, continuing that bond wouldn't be healthy for you. So this is really when we're talking about healthy, positive relationships, about that continuing bond.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me because like one of my thoughts too, one of the things that I've said to my clients who are, you know, accessing loved ones through their spirituality is to really go through that process of disconnecting who they are as spirit from who they were in human form, you know, because we have these memories of somebody that we've had relationships with in human form. And that may not all, I don't find that baggage, et cetera, gets carried over into the afterlife.
Exactly.
So tell me, why are you so passionate about grief and loss? Like, why is this your thing?
Well, because I've been through it. My mom died when I was 14 years old. I share that story in the Holistic Mental Health book. And I really struggled. You know, I was a hot mess after my mom died. And fortunately, my dad recognized that and he got me into grief counseling. And I met an amazing social worker and she helped me so much. And also being around other grieving teens, I knew I wasn't alone. Up until that point, I felt like I was the only one that had gone through something like that. And so then Rini asked me to start volunteering with the kids groups. And I knew right away that's what I wanted to do. I got my degree in social work, started volunteering for hospice, even in Florida. And it's just been my passion. I've done other things throughout my career, but I've always had that part of me that has always just wanted to do grief and loss. And so now that I'm in private practice, I can. And I absolutely love it. Everybody laughs because I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to have grief group tonight. And people are like, oh, this is... But I absolutely love it. I love to being able to hold that space for people who are grieving. I love to be able to connect them with other grieving individuals and to really be able to help them be able to move through their grief. Yeah. And, we get bigger than our grief, and I want to help people get them bigger. And my main goal really, I think, with working with any of my clients, individual or group, is really to help them focus on the life rather than the death. Our brain loves to focus on the end and the death and how they died and the coulda, woulda, shouldas. And I really want to be able to get past that so then they can focus on all the good memories they had of their loved one and feel that connection.
Yeah. I love that. I love getting bigger than the grief. That feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're focusing on the individual too. Like, you're not just your grief either.
No, absolutely not. And there's also the secondary losses as well. We can't just look at the primary loss of the loved one, but there's all the secondary losses as well. If it was a spouse that died, it's maybe the financial stresses. It's that loss of that partner that you tell everything to and that connection. And then maybe for a grieving parent, it's, who am I now without my child? Am I still a parent? How many children do I say I have now? I hear that all the time. Yeah. So there's all of these, these secondary losses that we also have to grieve as well.
I love that you brought that forward. I think that's so important because it's that network that we're then left with, right? Once this person passes. Yeah. Yeah. And when that shifts, then it's like, you feel lost, you feel alone,
mm-hmm.
all the things.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what are the kinds of tools that you use with your clients to kind of help them reclaim themselves and move through this?
So the first thing I really do is I want to know about their loved one. I want to hear their stories. I want them to bring in pictures and really get me to know who their loved one was and why they're so important to them. And then I move into teaching them some tools. I teach them tapping, because tapping is an amazing tool to use to be able to help, especially during the big grief bursts. And also even to get away from that avoidance piece. When you're tapping, sometimes all those emotions love to come out. And I think that's so beneficial and helpful. And then I usually go into progressive counting. Not everybody's familiar with progressive counting, but it's been around for a while at this point. I've been trained in it for almost 10 years now. And what I use progressive counting for is I help people to get away from the death scene that they have in their mind. Whether they were there or not when their loved one died, they've created a memory of what that looks like in their mind, and they get stuck on that. And so I use progressive counting, which is a trauma resolution technique, extremely effective. The research shows it's just as effective, if not more effective, than EMDR, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that really can help with desensitizing that death scene, I'll call it, and can get them to focus more on the life. And then I'll go into EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, the gold standard of trauma treatment. Been around for a long time at this point, but I use it a little differently. I use it in conjunction with something called induced after-death communication. And EMDR does not endorse IADC because it is done very differently. You actually don't worry so much about the memory. You focus on the feeling, the core feeling of sadness. And what the premise of this technique is saying is that the anger or the guilt, that's actually just distracting you from the core sadness of the grief.
Yeah.
And so when we can stay focused on that core sadness, we can sometimes help the client to feel a little more peaceful. And then we can do it a bit of an induction for them to have an after-death communication. And what an after-death communication is, sometimes it's visual, seeing something, visualizing something. Sometimes it's a feeling. You get this general sense that somebody's there. Sometimes it's that feeling on your arm, like you feel like someone's grabbing you or touching you. Sometimes it's you hear something. After-death communications are naturally occurring. We all have them a lot. Well, most people do, I think. And the research shows with an IADC session, about 75% of people will experience an after-death communication with their loved one.
That's amazing.
And if you don't know what that really means, I'll give you an example. So after 9/11, my sister was in New York City when it happened, thankfully nowhere near the Trade Center, but still pretty, scary. She had to walk over, the Brooklyn Bridge to get home that day. I was in Florida, didn't know where my sister was because, of course we couldn't get in touch with her.
Right.
And so it was a couple of weeks later, still really struggling with what had happened to our country and to our world. And I had this amazing dream about my mom. And it wasn't like any other dream I've ever had about my mom. There was a bright light behind her. She looked beautiful and peaceful, and she just held me.
Oh.
And I truly believe that was a visitation dream. A visitation dream feels very different than like a regular dream about your loved one, where they're just kind of they're in and about, And so I emailed my sister, because at that point, I don't even know if cell phones and stuff, I emailed her all the time. And I said, I had a dream about mom last night, call me. And she emailed me back. She had the same dream about my mom the night before. And I really believe that my mom knew we needed that.
Wow.
And, just that sense of her. And so if I can give my clients, help them to feel that connection to their loved one, then it's totally worth my time and my energy. And, and even the people, my clients that have not had an after-death communication during one of these sessions, they still feel so much better because of the intensity with the EMDR, with the core sadness that we're focusing on, they still have an amazing result from that process.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. It's so interesting that we're talking about this too, because, me being a therapist for 20 years as well, EMDR is something that I know is effective. But it's just not something that I've been fully drawn to because of the memory piece, because I believe so much more in what you're talking about, like getting in touch with the feeling. And
absolutely,
that's the important part of it. And that core sadness piece, I love that. I love that so much, because you're exactly right. Like the guilt, the anger, all of those other stages are simply a distraction.
Yep. Well, I'm going to pick on you, Laura, for a moment. We're not going to use the word stages with grief and loss.
Oh my gosh, do it. Because I hate them. Because
they are not accurate.
They're not. I've never, ever, ever followed those.
Well, and the reality is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross developed the stages for people who were dying. They were not intended to be translated for grieving individuals. And unfortunately, our society latched onto them, probably because we didn't have anything better, but now we do. We have better theories and techniques in the grief world, and it's an outdated model. It shouldn't be used anymore. It's still taught in schools, still taught to medical professionals, and it's not accurate. There's no empirical evidence to support it. It just isn't right. And so when I always I'm sorry to jump on you about that.
Oh, no, I feel the exact same way.
It's just not accurate. And the more that I can get out there and educate people about that isn't something that they should be modeling themselves, because it makes them feel like they're doing their grief wrong. Oh, well, I haven't had anger, so am I grieving wrong? Well, no, because it isn't an accurate model.
Yeah, it's funny, because I think for me, it was beneficial for little snippets when I would just realize anger or guilt would come up, and I'd be like, oh, well, that's my grief. You know what I mean? I was able to identify it that way. But it's really more like you were talking about with grief bursts earlier. That's how I kind of know when it's grief, because I'll just be walking through the grocery store, blah, blah, blah. And it just
exactly
out of nowhere. And you're like, what the fuck is this? But yeah, I mean, that's the grief. But yeah, I mean, I feel like any staged anything is limiting to the individual.
I agree.
But this is perfect, because honestly, this is exactly where you're taking your business, right? These are your goals is to educate people, to have people become more grief informed. So can you talk to us about your plans around that too?
Yes. So I will tell you, you're one of the, I guess I'm telling all of Facebook too at the same time. I just filled out my paperwork for another business this weekend to start an LLC, Center for Informed Grief, with my goal to offer online courses for first initially for school personnel. I want to be able to help the school social workers, the guidance counselors, even the teachers that are working with grieving children. They don't know, they don't have the tools, they haven't had the education around that. And I want to be able to help them to be able to support these kiddos, because actually this is perfect timing, but this week is Grief Awareness Week for children. And Thursday is that day, or it's actually Wednesday. And so we know that what the research says, Judy's house out in Denver, which is in a beautiful facility, and they do amazing work with grieving children. They do a ton of research on children's grief. And their research shows that 1 in 13 children will have a parent or a sibling die by the time they're 18 years old.
Wow.
And so you have to think about how many kiddos are in school that are grieving. And I was one of them. And I had some really, to be honest, shitty teachers say some really stupid stuff to me that was really hurtful, that I guarantee if one of my friends is listening right now, she knows exactly what I'm talking about, because she was in that bio class when that happened. And so if I can help these teachers and these professionals be able to support these kiddos better so they can also get their education, that's really my goal for this new business. And then I also want to target therapists as well, because unfortunately for me, I did not have a grief and loss course in social work. I took one in the nursing department, I took one in the religion department, and then obviously I did my internship and I've focused my career on it, but I didn't have a graduate level class or undergraduate level class in grief and loss. And it shows, I just did a Facebook poll a couple of months ago, and about 60% of therapists do not have any education in grief and loss in their degree.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, the reason that I'm more educated in it, not like you, but more educated, is because my dad died.
Exactly.
So I'm a social worker, and I'm, infinitely curious about this shit. And so I educated myself in that way. Right. But like, that's why I did the same thing with eating disorders for years, because I was an eating disorder specialist for 2 decades. And I would go into schools and educate, because those are the things, like, I was never taught that in grad school, and that's a freaking specialty, man. Like, you need, like, that's one where you need to have a specialty. Same thing with grief and loss, So I love that you're so genuinely heart-centered and devoted to this, not just for your intimate relationship with your clients, but for educating the collective, and even more importantly, the professionals that can impact even more people.
Well, so I have to share a funny story. So I had, obviously give my spiel about grief and loss, give that, help kids and adults to feel like they're not losing their mind and they're not going crazy. They're actually just grieving, and, go over the stages being outdated, all that, give some psychoeducation around grief and loss. I just help normalize their feelings. And a kiddo recently in health class was asked to list the 5 stages of grief and loss. And she basically wrote on her paper, well, this is an outdated model and actually was designed for people who were dying, and listed what they were to get the credit, but also put that preference in there. And I was like, yes, awesome. I was so excited to hear that.
That's amazing. And I love that she internalized it. Oh my gosh. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I was like, all right, but that's the sad part, is that's what's being taught in the schools. And I get it. Teachers are dealing with so much, mental health. They don't have that training for that at all. And every kiddo, especially over the last few years with COVID and what they're dealing with, I mean, they're dealing with a lot. So if I can help them be able to better support these kids, I'm super excited about starting this new business and seeing where it goes.
I'm so excited. I feel really good vibes around it, baby. It's going to expand like wildfire. All right. So I am dropping Kelly's links, dudes. As I always say at the end of this show, if you feel connected to Kelly, if there's something that she said that you feel like, oh, that really activated me in a good way or a bad way, right? Like, oh my gosh, like that set me off a little. Contact her. Like, everybody who comes on this show is really open and willing to receive whatever comes forward for you. And it's all about that connection. That's what's going to hold you safely and make you feel like, okay, like I feel rooted, I feel grounded. And everybody that I know that has connected with Kelly around grief is like, holy crap. So I highly recommend you connect with her. Is there anything else you want to share, Kelly, before we close up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I offer grief groups throughout the year. I've got some ones going on currently, but some new ones starting up in December for bereaved parents, for widowers. I'm doing a middle school group, a teen group, and a general grief and loss group for anyone who's experienced a significant loss in their life. And these groups are offered hybrid. So they're either you can come here into my office in Malta, or you can join us virtually via Zoom. It's actually working out really well to do some of these hybrid groups. And because of my licensure, if you're in New York, South Carolina, or Florida, you can join those groups.
Cool.
So
I love that. And that's perfect to one of the things that you've noted too, which is really tapping into a support system, right?
Absolutely.
And some people can feel like, well, I don't have one, or where is it, with those secondary losses that you were talking about. And so being able to have access to something like this just assists them with expanding that network, right?
Yeah. And can I go over a little tool real fast?
Please.
So I kind of combine a couple of different tools. One tool is really to identify your support system, because when we're grieving, not everybody is equipped to hold that space for you. And unfortunately, our society is really afraid to talk about grief and loss. And so people say those cliched responses that usually are not helpful, and sometimes they're actually hurtful and harmful. And so we have to make sure we know who the people are that we go to for support when we're grieving. Not everybody's that listener. Not everybody's going to be that person that will truly listen without judging, or without making it about themselves, or without telling you what you should or shouldn't be feeling. So really being able to think about your support system, maybe even make a list. Who are those listeners? Who are those people that you can turn to that when you need to talk about your loved one will listen? Who are the people that are the doers? These are the people that maybe you call up and say, hey, can you take me to my doctor's appointment? Or, hey, can you help me with my lawn work? Because I've never mowed my lawn before, and now my husband's gone and I don't know how to do it. Who are the doers? And then also, who are the people you can just have fun with? You can have a little respite with that. You can maybe, like me, go to my DIY art classes and let loose and have fun with and laugh with. You know, you got to find a balance. And so some people are going to be all three of those roles.
Yeah.
Or nothing, right? And so also being able to identify the people that are unhelpful, that maybe when you go to talk to them about your grief, it doesn't go well. And so once you've kind of have that list, start reaching out to one listener, one doer, one respite. Try to incorporate that into your week, because grief is isolating and you do it alone. And so the more that you can reach out, the better. And so I do that with all of my clients. I have them come up with that list and really challenge them to reach out to those. And then another great tool that I like to incorporate with that is something called tapping in resources. Laurel Purnell developed this, and I love it. And basically what you do is you visualize that support system. You see them and you look around at each one of them and feel their support for you. Because regardless of wherever you are, you can always feel that support. Even when you're feeling really alone in the middle of the night and you're grieving and having a big old grief burst, you can still visualize that support system. And maybe your animals, maybe your spiritual helpers, whoever, even your loved one that's gone, could be still in that circle of support for you. And you can visualize that, feel it, and then just tap on your legs, right, left, tapping to intensify that, to really strengthen that connection, feel it. And knowing that you could do that anytime, anywhere, and it's really going to help you feel less alone and really feel supported.
Dude, you literally gave us like 500 tools today. Like, it's amazing. I did. Thank you for being so generous and giving.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love that so much. I have so much homework from this episode. All right, friends. So thank you for joining us, and get in touch with Kelly, reach out to her. And if you're hesitant, reach out to me and I'll connect the two of you. Because sometimes people can feel shy, especially if they're in a space of grief, right? And like kind of hiding and avoiding. So reach out to whoever you feel comfortable with and we'll get you what you need. But thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, friends, I will see you next week for another episode of Heal Profoundly and Enduringly. Bye for now.